the invitation. Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my presentation. So just moving things around. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Perfect. So just moving things one more thing. There we go. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. And so let's start with talking a little bit of a O2 portal. But so the title for today's seminar is perhaps a bit long, but we wanted to convey the main purpose of the O2 portal in the title at HMS Research Computing. So we're really excited to share the news about the O2 portal, which is available now to the HMS community. Right, so let's see if I can move to the next slide. Here we go. So the agenda for today is short. Is basically to provide an overview, some highlights, how to access the O2 portal, and some general features, and where to get more information. So that can help you navigate through this new service at HMS. So starting with the overview, so the O2 portal is a web-based single access point, right? So it's powered by Open On Demand, which is an open source software supported by the NSF. At HMS, it provides access to the O2 cluster via an internet browser. So here just took a screenshot on that landing page for the O2 portal. Very simple and straight to the point. So, but before we started the O2 portal, we launched a pilot, including a relatively small group. So we had a relatively small group of beta testers, 40 plus beta tester from 18 groups or groups. For the pilot, we had applications from BioGrids and HMS Research Computing applications. Again, it's relatively small. Nonetheless, we noticed that more than 1,000 jobs were submitted to O2 through the Open On Demand pilot in the last 6 months of the project. So here's some bits from like what we learned through from the Open On Demand pilot. So we received positive feedback from researchers. Here's just a handful of them, and it just highlight how intuitive is the user face, this drag and drop sort of feature, low latency, and more. And again, so we had a wide range of researchers from various different groups and labs at HMS. To access the O2 portal, there are essentially 2 requirements. The first one is you need an O2 account, and the second one is to set up a 2-factor authentication. So again, it's just a reminder, it's the HMS ID, so it's not to be confused with the Harvard ID. So very important, VPN is not required. In fact, we recommend not to use it while working on the O2 portal. But here are some of the main features that you can get through Open On Demand. So transfer files, terminal, submitting jobs, view and edit files, monitor jobs and applications. So so the second part of this presentation, I'm gonna do a short demo so you can get an idea of how this O2 portal looks like and works, which again, for somebody like a biologist or somebody who is used to the bench and is trying to get to their hands with this new data set that they have, they know the applications, they have their workflows, but they need to get the data analyzed in a high performance compute cluster. So because the resources that they have on the laptop is no longer sufficient to to walk you through the process of analyzing the data. So now you don't need to feel scared about using the terminal, or even like the challenging of like using X11 forwarding, which for those who are familiar with X11, know how laggy or some caveats that comes with that sort of approach. So with O2 portal, we are sort of trying to elevate the experience a little bit more. And again, this is everything possible through the open on demand framework. So here, so we have several applications on the O2 portal. This slide shows a few logos of some popular applications. So expect in the near future new applications. So the O2 portal is essentially a gateway, so that in the near future, we are hoping to have more applications that we know that we heard quite often. So stay tuned for those in the near future. And of course, we have documentation to guide you through this new service. The documentation can be accessed via the help menu on the O2 portal, or via the hyperlink located on the upper right corner of this slide. So I'm gonna make sure that I can share the presentation with CCB so that they can forward the presentation to you all. All right, so before jumping into the demo part, I just wanted to point out the contact information if there's any question or down the road. So please feel free to email HMS Research Computing at rchelp@hms.harvard.edu. We have a website. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we have also a Twitter account. So we post some of the coming maintenance and kind of relevant tweets. Where we are located. We also have office hours. Just wanted to mention that in case that you down the road you get some questions about the O2 portal, or you're just trying to learn a little bit more on how you can integrate your research with the resources that are available to you through HMS Research Computing. Before jumping into the demo, I wanted to make sure that I know Amir Hager, my boss, is around here. I do not know if he wants to make any comments about so far, or he wants to say something.
I think we should get to the demo. That's what people are hoping to see.
Sounds great. All right, so I'm gonna stop this for a minute. So actually this next slide. So here is the link on how you can get to the O2 portal. So I'm just going to click on the link, and I'm going to stop the presentation for a minute, sharing my presentation, and it's just to follow that link. Okay. All right. So let me share again. So hopefully you can see my browser, and I'm just going to open a few tabs here so that I know. Okay, perfect. So when you open the link, you're essentially prompted to enter your HMS ID and password. For purpose of this presentation that has been recorded, so I already log in into my O2 portal session, and hopefully you can see the landing page. So for a second, I was in a different view, but I just wanted to make to go from the beginning. So, so here, so wait. Okay. So just to make sure the tab changed accordingly. Is that right? Somebody can confirm. So currently, you should be able to see the HMS Research Computing message and the O2 portal with the logos.
This is correct.
That is perfect. Thank you, Ludwig.
This is what we're seeing currently.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so when you land here, so you get a little bit of information, some of that logos that you have seen already on the presentation. But let's start from the to walk through the options from top to right. So here you first have the Files tab, and essentially here you get a quick access to the file system on O2. So home directory, scratch, data 1, data 2. So here's the last bit. This is currently this quota is in development. It's a development tool. So currently it's internal, but it's in the near future we're planning to release it, and it's to show people their disk usage. So on the second tab we have jobs, and so the first option is pretty self-explanatory. So active jobs, and the second option is the job composer. I just want to go here because I think this can provide us some nice feature down the road for like using this on trainings or other relevant and like when you're sharing templates with, or like scripts with your lab colleagues. So here I don't have anything, but I just wanted to point out that there are 3 different ways in where you can, or 3 different approaches in where you can create jobs. Here is from a template, a path, or from a selected job. And this feature, as I mentioned, can be valuable for future trainings. Just to give you an example, if we have a centralized location with, or we have a directory that we want to share some bash or slurm scripts, so you can specify that. So I have already a quick, I have a path in where I can just, with a script currently, so it's very simple. I just pasted this the path there, but I can just save it. I'm just not going to mention any of that. But once I click on here, so I can see that I have this sbash-r template example. So if I click on it, I can see all the different sort of script commands that I can share with a colleague, or if it's a class with the attendees. So it's pretty cool feature in where let you share files or templates with other lab mates or collaborators via, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you mind increasing the size of the browser?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The font size?
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. So here's just an example. So I just click on, oh, it looks a little bit bigger now, this one, but I just click on the folder content, which for this example is just showing one simple Slurm script for running an R script. But imagine it can be anything from a workflow and from like many complicated things, but here's just an example on how you can share a template. All right, so I'm just gonna go close this. Of course, you can edit it, save it in a different location. You have a lot of flexibility. It's just one feature I thought is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back to 100%. And I'm just gonna go back to this tab. All right, so if we move to the next tab, here we have the O2 terminal. If we click on it, we just simply get a terminal, give you access to the O2 cluster via terminal, but now using your browser. I'm gonna try to increase the font. I'm just gonna try to log in if I remember my password. And of course, you can see when you authenticate, in this case, you land on a login node. And if you still remember the basics for O2, in case that you're familiar with O2, if not, it's important to know that when you land in a login node, so this area it's not meant for like heavy lifting. So anything that is computationally intensive. So this is more where you land to move into a compute node in order for you to do all the amazing job magic that is happening when you're analyzing your data. All right, let's go back. We talk about clusters. All right, so the older part, it's as I mentioned earlier. So there are two data sets. On the O2 portal, you'll find two sets of scientific software applications, which are supported by BioGrids and HMS Research Computing. So those are the next two tabs. So BioGrids application. So the BioGrids team, they pre-configure its applications to ensure that they will run compatibly with each other. While the HMSRC, the HMS Research Computing applications are more open to user configuration. So of course, we invite you to try whichever tool best meet your needs. But just to show you the applications currently on BioGrid, so they have IGV, Jupyter, and RStudio. And here we have the HMS Research Computing application, Desktop Main, MATLAB, RStudio, and Shiny as well. And Shiny. Okay, so let's see. Moving into, before getting into one of the specific applications, I just want to move into this last my interactive sessions. So again, this tab is very self-explanatory. I launched a few applications before the seminar started, just so that it was pre-populated with some apps running. So you will see some information, a few applications already running, but just wanted to show you how it looks like. So here are my interactive sessions. If you look at here at the bottom, it shows that one of my jobs was completed. In other words, it basically consumed the wall time, or the time that I allocated for the application to run. And just a reminder, so here you're looking at you're looking at various different sessions using, in this case, MATLAB, in this case, Jupyter, RStudio, and all of these applications are running using resources from the O2 cluster. So here on the side, you can see some applications, BioGrids applications, the HMSRC applications. Here's on red, it's there are like some internal applications that are like work in progress, specifically related to my sandbox, and which kind of relate to the following tab on. Let me just go back because it's very distractive to see all those different colors. So it's related to the develop tab. Again, this tab is not by default seen by the regular O2 portal user. But here, as a research computing consultant, we're currently active on like developing or changing, pretty much updating applications to see how they integrate with O2 portal. So I can get to this develop tab. Last but not least, on this series of tab, we have some valuable information about help. So first, this one redirects you to the RC help at hmsharvard.edu. The other one, the online documentation, it takes you to our Confluence wiki page. And this redirects you to one of the IT website and how you can reset your password. And this is important in case that your password expires or it needs to be changed, or if you're locked out. So I mean, it just redirects you there. for whatever reason, you need to get to change your password. If you're locked down, maybe you're not going to be able to access it because, yes, you're not going to be able to get here. And last but not least, to start a web server, does not take any system-wide effect. So this is just basically reloading. This reloads simply reload your own session. All right. So let me go into one of the applications so that you see how things work. So I'm just gonna go to our studio on O2 so that you can see how it works. So we tried to like homogenize like the templates or like the fields that are for across applications. So here I'm just looking at our studio. First thing is the Slurm account. Here it's the one that this changed based on the Slurm account that you are associated to. So I'm only associated with one a Slurm account, but some of the researchers might be associated with more than one Slurm account. This account is not the same as your HMS ID, but needless to say, you don't have to worry about like knowing your Slurm account because it's pre-populated based on the authentication, the way that you're authenticated. The partitions, here you can see some of those partitions available on O2. Number of cores, GPU, this of course is optional. Wall time, memory, and we put a warning here because we have seen that researchers they usually go with the default in terms of allocated memory allocated for a job, and this can result like if you know your script needs more than 1 GB, so you can change this accordingly just to avoid potential issues with the application that you're intending to use. Modules to be loaded. So here, since we're using our studio, you can change which version of R you're planning to use for your session. And then some optional environment arguments that you can include. And last but not least, some of the file systems that you would like to see from inside of your application. So very simple. I mean, I'm just going to launch our studio using the priority partition, default in terms of memory, wall time, and the same that our version. Just going to click on launch. And while that is happening, you will see that the job is just going to sit on a queue, once start running or start on queue, then it will switch over to starting and finally running. Those are the 3 stages. While this is on the queue, I wanted to mention a few other things that are related to the applications. We already covered the options. So to connect to an application, you just wait until it's running, and then you click on this blue icon where it says connect to, followed by the name of the application. And the other very important piece of information that you need to know, it is the session ID. So this is what's going to help you when things are not working properly. If there's an error that you're not seeing immediately, it's, for instance, if you're trying to launch our studio via the O2 portal, but the application is not launching, so you wanted to immediately click on the session ID. Like let's say here it didn't reach to running, but rather it says it went directly to completed. That's how you know something didn't go as intended. So and if that happened, you can just go to this session ID, which is, it is a unique string in a folder containing the logs for the interactive session. So if I click on that, so I can see a series of files. I think the most important one is this output.log file. If I click on it, it will prompt it will open a new window, which you're probably not seeing right now because it's opening a new window. But let's see if I can just change that view for a second.
I think we do see it.
Oh, you do see it? Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. But just in case I reshare that window, and it's just basically showing you some output information. If this would, you know, like let's say if you use the default sort of memory, and you use RStudio on O2, and originally you and for some reason you're getting an error related to memory, you will see all of that information in here in this file. It will be captured there. Okay, so I'm gonna try to reshare the whole thing because wait, no. Okay, so hopefully someone can confirm that you can see I'm back to perfect. So here it's just basically a bunch of different files. I think the most important one to first look at, that if something is not working properly, just look at the output.log. That can provide you with a bunch of different information. If you need the research computing to can provide more information, you can always contact us, and you can even say you can copy this up here, and we can take a look at that output.log, and we can provide much more help. So, all right, so I'm just going back to here. Now I have multiple applications running. I can go click on RStudio server. If I click on it, takes a few seconds. Now you can see the URL up here saying that it's using a compute node in order for me to run RStudio and various different workflow in R. Quite neat, quite awesome in my personal opinion. You get MATLAB. You can with Jupyter, which is another popular application widely used at HMS. For Jupyter, we offer two flavors. The first flavor is, of course, the traditional Jupyter notebooks. But if you scroll down here, you have the new Jupyter Lab. So that is always an option. So just wanted to point that out. It's just a toggle. If you enable here, so instead of loading or launching Jupyter notebooks, you're launching a Jupyter Lab. That's why we call it Jupyter rather than Jupyter Notebook. And just want to go back to here to my interactive sessions. So I just want to click on connect to Jupyter. This is Jupyter Lab, which I started before the seminar. But this can get you to this sort of like new GUI or graphical user interface using Jupyter Lab, and you get access to the O2 files and so on, or the files directories that I have on my home directory, but I can move to various different file systems. Just make sure to mount or check the file system that you would like to see from the inside of the application. I guess one more thing that is related to transfer file, and I just don't want to miss that since we are here. So transfer, it's also more straightforward using the O2 portal. So in this case, so here you can see all of my different scripts on my home directory. If I click here and I can just say I can download that to my local computer, and the other way around, I can click on upload and I can select the files that I want, the file or the folder that I want to upload to O2. So in that way, you can just, move your data to where you need it. And I wanted to mention that all of this, so this isn't, of course, I'm using my computer. If let's say if you're commuting to HMS and you're taking the commuter rail and you have your phone and you need to get access to the terminal or like access to the O2 environment, you can access the O2 portal from your phone, if you will. So again, it's just it provides much more flexibility and a more easier or more user-friendly way, so that you don't have to feel threatened by the terminal, or if you're not so familiar, or if you're familiar, just provide you with a different sort of a approach for you to access the O2 resources. And with that, I think that I'm going to stop here and see if maybe Amir or I don't know if Rafael is around here, if there's any other comments that you may think about or that I missed to cover, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gabby. There are some questions that people may want to ask. A couple came up in the chat that I may not have answered fully. Again, I think if you're hitting bugs or errors, then that's something we should probably do offline with an email to RC Help. But if you have questions about sort of what is the interface like, we're happy to talk about that here. So I just wanted to mention a couple other things that I think Gabby mentioned, but I wanted to stress because I think they're really great. First is just the fact that this makes O2 graphics much more pleasant than it has been in the past. So those who have fought for years with X11 forwarding, whether it was buggy or whether it was just slow and frustrating, you can now use the MATLAB graphical interface and actually make a plot and then interact with it as if you're maybe not quite as fast as if you're on your desktop, but it's usable, which was not always true for older systems. And that's true for RStudio, for Jupyter, for MATLAB, for IGV, which a number of people in the genetics department were using happily during our pilot. So that's I think one of the big and important features that we wanted to stress. As Gabby said, the file transfer thing I think is just going to make it convenient for people to go back and forth. And because Open On Demand is just using the regular old Unix permissions that are behind everything, if you have a group folder and you have a home folder, you can move to any folder where you're able to write files. You should be able to transfer files from your desktop, so you have access to pretty much all of the things that you would have access to from the command line. So it's really it opens up just that possibility of interacting in a simpler way. You can edit files with the syntax highlighting editor, which so some people are more comfortable using that rather than Nano from the command line or Emacs or VI. So it's just opening up really new possibilities to do a number of things. And with that, maybe we should ask if people it looks like a couple people have asked in the question in the chat here.
Excellent. So thanks for a really great presentation, Gabi. Also a very nice live demonstration. It's always the most difficult part with a new piece of software, and I can tell everything worked out great. So perfect for that. And as Amir mentioned, there are a number of really interesting questions in the chat around Shiny, but also around how to stand up maybe non-Shiny visualizations. Maybe you can address that. But before, I just wanted to ask, so right now you have kind of like selected the panel of 5 application, it seems, like MATLAB, Shiny, Jupyter Notebook, and 2 more. So how did you decide for that, and how can people get their voice out to say, hey, I really care about this application? What are your plans there? Is there a survey or something? What are future plans? It looks really exciting.
So that's a great question. We haven't gotten sophisticated enough yet to build a whole survey. I will say that we certainly do want to be adding applications. Given the interest and excitement with AlphaFold that we've seen over the last few months, I would certainly want to have 1 or 2 AlphaFold applications if we can make that work. But I'm sure that there are going to be some others that we'll want to use. And so, this is just the beginning, and we're eager to move this forward. You can send your check or money order to 1635 Tremont Street under my name if you want to vote for something, or you can email rchelp@HMS with your request. So we might end up doing a larger survey once we have more people who are using the system. But in the meantime, certainly you're invited to email us either with questions about how it works, questions about how to do a particular thing that doesn't seem to work right, or ideas for how it can expand. I mean, this is really sort of a new, it's a whole new way of accessing the cluster, and so I think there are going to be lots of new tools that we can be looking into.
Excellent. So yeah, great. And with that, maybe 2 questions from the audience. I see Artem has a question. I think you also posted this to the chat, but just go ahead, Artem.
Yeah, so maybe I'll ask a slightly more general question. So, in a general sense, if I have a container that serves something on a given port, would I be able to stand it up and then connect to that port using my browser? Assuming that, the container passed all the checks, right? So there's a Singularity container running, it's serving content on a given port. Can I connect to that?
So I'll jump in here for a moment, Gabby, if you want. If I understand correctly, what you're talking about is not even necessarily something that requires the O2 portal and open on demand. You're just
sure.
So basically the answer is yes. Let me rephrase the answer. As of right now, if you are within the VPN, you could potentially just put the host name, like the compute host name, in your browser and go to that port. Singularity has all the port basically open by default. So that will work straightforward. If you want to integrate that within Open on Demand, you need to have an application that starts that container and then basically opens a web browser that points to the host name where that container was started. So in essence, a similar application to Jupyter that we have there, or a studio for, a studio as well for Rolling Mothers. So you need to build an application for Open on Demand for the O2 portal to do what you're talking about within Open on Demand.
Yeah. Is that, so I guess I mean, you describe it beautifully, right? And the idea would be is that, the O2 portal will keep track of which host the container is running on, so that a user, which would be an experimental biologist, doesn't have to type in, the name of the host and the port. So is that something that you guys are thinking about? Is that something that you could do? And if not, is it, something that we could write on our end for the...
So we can allow you to do it. It's rather straightforward. I'm not 100% sure how much, Gabby, you cover of that. I was multitasking, and as you all know, we are really not parallel, we are serial, and so I might have missed it. But we can enable user to have their sandbox and build their own Open on Demand application, and we would welcome for a lab to come out with an awesome application that we can then host on the entire O2. Absolutely. So we can certainly also provide you help and guidance on how to do that, but it is relatively straightforward. In my limited experience with debugging open on demand applications, the challenge is often the authentication part, where you want your whatever it's running inside the container to be authenticated against a password. And so basically a random person that just jumps on that address can't hijack your
Right.
shell, your whatever it's being passed on that port. So that has been the most difficult challenge. And then of course that depends on what you are doing, because every application has its own flavor on how to handle that. Maybe some
the ones that I'm thinking about in particular would be, a Python Flask server that's running, right, that you would connect to, and there's some amount of data that gets passed.
Yeah.
So,
Artem, this definitely sounds like an exciting option, and I think more broadly, this is going to be an opportunity for labs to share things with their less experienced members, for labs to share things with other labs within the clusters. So we're really looking forward to these opportunities. It sounds like you and Raffaele should probably have some coffee and discuss the options here, but it open on demand does appear to allow these kinds of things. So it sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
So that's great. I think Gabi also just pasted a link to the slide earlier in the chat. I pasted a link to the seminar page where we will have the recording soon after the seminar for folks that joined a little bit later on and want to catch up. Was another question from Alexandro, who was wondering a little bit, how does it work behind the scenes? Whether apps are launched via Docker or Kubernetes. I think Kubernetes, no, it's O2, separate VMs or some other way. Maybe you could give some insight there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is like when we build one of these open on demand applications, or so of course there's a community behind open on demand. So since a lot of different HPC centers, they're adopted this sort of a framework. So then there's several applications that are out there that we usually take advantage of the community who are sharing this open source code, and we are adapting that those applications to work with O2. So kudos to those researchers who are enabling or making that science move forward. But I wanted to mention that applications, they're not as straightforward as they may sound. And of course, you heard Raffaele mention a few things. So for most of the applications that we have, or a good chunk of them, they're currently on containers. Now, there's a few things. So it's not one single file. It's like so an open on demand application is not a single file. There's a structure, and there are like multiple files there. They currently talk to each other, or like they sort of provide the scaffold so that it just perfectly sync with open on demand, the open on demand portal. Just to give you an example, there's like a specific file that sort of allows do the linkage between this reverse proxy to the application you're trying to develop. There's a specific file that or a script that so most of the language used for open on demand application, I believe, is Ruby or ERB. What else? So mostly containers. There are some that make use of VNC. There's some challenges for sure. Again, just want to reiterate or stress that part of the integrating like the authentication piece between a computer and between O2 or like open on demand and your session. And actually, let's see, I still have, yes, I still have this. Just why not? Just for those who are very familiar or interested on this, I'm just gonna share the architecture behind. I know it might be a little bit dense for some, but here's like how like this is I included. So there's an open on demand documentation which talk about the architecture behind this. Just wanted, we were like hesitant to include this as part of the presentation because maybe a little bit outside of the scope for today's seminar. But sufficient to say that the application, like the behind scene, it's a multi-step and multiple files that make an application work. Yeah, I can be more into details with that. I'm happy to continue the conversation via ticket or even I know that more of the open on demand members or members of the project will be more than happy to talk to you about this and work something out.
I'd like to toss a super quick piece of information there. Again, sorry if I missed it to be said before. One nice feature is that every open on demand connection that you make, when you connect to your open on demand, you're running against a server that's running under your user account. So everything that you can do within the O2 portal, so open on demand that runs in our O2 portal, it's happening with your user credential. So you can't go and look someone else's lab's files unless you have access to those files. And every job, everything that you do, like this, what runs on the VM where the actual on-demand application tool itself runs, for your page runs under your username, and for another user it will be his own username. So that is a good safety features that we liked.
I wanted to mention one last thing that is very, 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 very important, and I do not want to miss the opportunity to mention this to the group or the attendees. And and that's the reason I should reshare my my screen, and it's very important. And again, I stress that enough. But it's very important to remember that if you close your browser, that does not mean that the applications are going to stop running. They're going to continue running on the background on the O2 portal. And so it is very important that if you finish the session, you're done with analyzing your data, you go back to my interactive session and you go press delete just to confirm that you finish. Otherwise, if you don't do that and you just close your browser, it's essentially going to use, like, the application is going to continue running on the background, and it's just going to stop until the end of the wall time. It reached the wall time. So you want to make sure that if you're not running it, so do not waste resources for O2 resources. Just click on delete, which is of course what I'm doing right now. Very important. And yeah, so just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Gabby. That's certainly important. We don't, we're hoping that lots of people will be using this for their big Jupyter jobs, but that means that if they can step on top of each other. So we do want to make sure once people are finished for the day, they do close it explicitly before going home. Gabby, can I just ask one more question from Sarah before we go? So she was asking about accessing login nodes versus compute nodes versus transfer nodes on O2 through Open on Demand, and I think she's explicitly interested in the file transfer piece of that. But can you just talk about those sort of three options with Open on Demand? Okay,
so I can tell you that through the O2 portal, you get access to like if you're launch terminal, you land into a login node. from that login node, you can move into a compute node, as you will with using an interactive job. But as currently, we do not like O2, the O2 portal do not have access to research.files or the transfer cluster, I believe is that the transfer cluster. So maybe down the road, we're gonna change that, but as of right now, we do not have access to that O2, like the transfer cluster, which is widely used by researchers for moving full data from the research.files.
Thank you.
Excellent. That is great. We still have a little bit of time. I wonder whether you surely want to reiterate on this Shiny piece, which I found very interesting, how this like separates like for the Shiny users using Open On Demand, or rather doing it on a third-party one. We have Shiny Apps IO, but we're also working together on RStudio Connect. You just want to say a couple of more words on this one, which I think will be pretty interesting for a lot of these folks here that are using Shinies and are interested in publishing this?
Yeah, so Shiny application, our Shiny or Shiny applications in general becoming more and more popular, and Shiny Apps.io is where a lot of people create applications or they host their applications that they write when they're publishing a paper. We've seen that that's become super popular, and so really there are two pieces to that. So I wrote into the chat a line from the documentation on the O2 portal. There's a whole page on this, and Gabby can give you lots more information on that offline. But you can run these Shiny applications on O2 sort of to look at your own data, and Open On Demand allows you to share that view with another person as long as they can get into O2 as well. So that's a neat opportunity for a certain kind of sharing. If you're looking to do the more common kind of sharing that you do with shinyapps.io, so because more and more researchers have been interested in that, we have started working with CCB to build a service that will use RStudio Connect, which is sort of a combination of Shiny apps and RStudio and lots of other cool tools to let you have your Shiny app hosted with us rather than on shinyapps.io. And so that's something we haven't rolled it out as an official service yet, but we're in the testing phases, and Ludwig has been helping with that as well.
Excellent. So that is great. And I think you also, for folks interested in that, gave some information how to contact you guys.
Yep.
With that, I'd really like to thank you, Gabi and Amir, for a fantastic presentation, for taking the time to walk us here through O2 and Open On Demand. The new functionality is really exciting. I'd say this is after half a year of seminars, our last seminar for 2 months, because we're going into a little summer break in July and August. We will be back in September with more talks on genomics and imaging. Check out the page that I pasted in the chat for the schedule. And with that, I'd say thank you very much, everyone, and see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.